I like building castles. I was fascinated by the medieval fortification constructions, and Stronghold really reinforced that passion in me. But I'm not a history student. I simply play Stronghold on YouTube for entertainment, so the possibility of seeing inaccurate historical information does exist. As after I built a castle in a previous video, a friend from you guys wrote a comment explaining some tactical historical facts about building medieval castles, which I showed and discussed in the next video. But another friend wrote a comment on that next video correcting some points about the reality of medieval castles. Needless to say, it's not personal. We're discussing some historical facts and seeing how to incorporate them into Stronghold. You can watch both videos from the links below, but it's not essential because in this video I will build a real-life historical castle that is still standing today in Serbia. Yes, it is Smederevo Castle. It will be as close as possible to the real one, and it will be an epic stronghold battle. We'll share real medieval tactics and build a real-life castle, then test it under a heavy siege in Stronghold DE. So welcome to Strongfort. Our friend RL Dragon Strider commenting on the comment. In summary, actually, if you want to read his entire comment, I'll copy paste it down this video. If you look at a real life castle, then you will find that there is special inner sections specifically made for the enemy to enter and be surrounded by autos in fortified positions to snipe them down. Which castle? Where? From what period? Castles are complex things. Few are alike, and castles vary differently based on geography, materials, and especially the time period they existed in. Yes, there were so-called killing zones that funnel the enemy and leave them exposed. I took some time searching in many castles to find one with killing zones. I have verified the information, but it wasn't easy to find a castle built with that design because of the variety in real-life castles design. 2. These pockets were usually made so that in order to go to the next gate, you must turn specifically left, being the fact that people carry a weapon in their right hand and shield in left. When you turn left, your right flank unshielded is bad to the defenders, therefore you are a more easier target. I wish the turning left thing would go away. It is such a myth. If your first gatehouse falls, the enemy cannot roll up a battering ram past the bend if the ram is longer than the bend. Such features become more prominent in the early 12th and 13th centuries, having been brought over by the Crusaders from the Holy Land. Well, according to your explanation, it is not a myth. It may not have existed in many castles, but it is a religious belief that he has from texts from the Old Testament, and for the lack of information I cannot say whether it's true. Whatever the case, the troops have the same health effect in all directions in Stronghold game. 3. Sometimes the first gate was specifically left open so that the enemy would stupidly come in, then the drawbridge would be raised from inside the gatehouse, or the cage-like thing, I forgot how it's called, would be lowered so that those who got in would be trapped and hit down by arrows. Portcullis. It is called a portcullis, and no, the idea of leaving your gate open to lure enemies in is just asinine. That kind of strategy means you are either very bold and sure of your odds or very stupid. Opening your gate to lure 10 to 20 guys and kill them is a waste of resources and risk is a breach. I perfectly agree with this and would have never made it in my gameplay. 5. Very wealthy lords would build forts or castles with up to 3 rings of walls where you can get on top of which only from the inner ring that is closest to the keep. A castle with several layered curtain walls for defense is called a concentric castle. I cannot think of any castle that had 3 concentric rings of walls around it. Carthage was a city from the early Iron Age. Babylon had 2 rows of walls as well. A more accurate example would be Constantinople with its Theodosian walls. I didn't find any castle with 3 layers of walls. That ended up asking the AI to create one just to explain the idea visually, but I don't know if that concept existed in small castles. 6. In reality, you didn't have so many working areas for the people inside a castle. All that stuff was primarily situated outside a fort because every fortified square meter cost us a lot of money. Therefore, most forts were actually a keep with a wall around it. That is too broad a statement that comes up more like a conjecture than a fact. That entirely depends on the type and size of the castle. Working buildings were certainly a part of a castle's architectural ensemble. Smiths, stables, barracks, armories, kitchens, herb and vegetable gardens. Those were a thing. Castles in Bulgaria had full-blown churches in their courtyards. What you cannot have is full-blown farms. Farms farms are relocated to the outside, where the farms and pastures were. Yes, there were structures outside the walls, but a castle is not just a keep with a wall around it. A castle is a fortified residence. By definition, it needs stuff to support the people inside of it and make their lives easier. This makes sense, because when I read every fortified meter costs us a lot of money, I didn't understand so much. Were the medieval lords renting these lands? Of course not. Then the castle must be perfectly exploited, not left empty because the land and walls cost us a lot of money. Such a big amount of people living on a square meter was unimaginable during those days. OP, are you aware that fortified cities existed? People used to pay property taxes by square meter, and with property taxes meaning that if the castle had it on its land, then this is a source of income. The exact opposite will happen if it were left empty. Look at Marienburg or Malbork Castle, the largest castle by land area. It's 52 hectares that had 3 refectories in it. A refectory is a monastic dining hall, and Malbork had 3 of them. Consider the amount of space just fed your Teutonic knights. Fortifications were not built in a field. If you were to build something so expensive like a stone fortress, then you would take in mind every single advantage you could possibly get. And the first thing that you would look for is a high ground that would overlook the surrounding area. Oh my god, again conjecture? A castle can prioritize terrain, yes, but not entirely. You can use the terrain to your advantage to further strengthen your fortifications. But there are castles that are not built in a hard-to-reach places. Bodiam Castle in England, Malbork in Poland, Warwick Castle, Birchel Castle, Castle Smederevo in Serbia, and many more. In such cases, as we can see, people did the next best thing. They dug a big moat around it. That is what I did in the castle our friend was commenting on at first, and it proved successful in delaying a much larger army, and they even breached the castle very weakened. Personally, I can't say who has the correct explanation of medieval castles. I'll leave that to you. Right now, I want to put the knowledge I gathered to good use. Not by creating a castle like what I did in the last video, but by building a real-life one in Stronghold. So I took a look over the older comments because I was remembering some of you guys were suggesting real castles to me to simulate in Stronghold. And in the first video on the channel, Filip Petrovic said Smederevo, and that is what I choose to build. Starting by simulating the landscape first. If we look at the real castle from a satellite view, we'll see that the land here is not a high ground or a small hill, but flat ground, with the fortress built directly on the Danube riverside. That would be a good position. With a natural defense, it can limit the approach of the enemy, and easy to dig a big moat and fill it with the river's water. Patching the bug in Stronghold DE, which is causing this many waterfalls. Putting the first stone in building Smederevo. If you noticed, there are walls with different height levels in the real castle, but in a stronghold there is no option to build low walls. So how can we simulate the real castle? My first method was to make an elevation in the land itself to vary the height of the walls, and I've built the castle entirely twice. Then I saw this video from EpicBattles on YouTube showing some interesting bugs in Stronghold. As Stronghold is maybe the only game you would watch videos about its bugs, not for fixing them. I've learned how to lower the walls and control the height of every section, so I thank the man in EpicBattles. Because of him, this project wouldn't be a detailed building of Smederevo and Stronghold. Instead, it would have been a simulation. And because of the isometric design of Stronghold, I can't build a regular square tower facing the north like this one, so I tried to be somewhat creative in building the tower with stone bricks on high ground to match the height of the other towers, but it looked ridiculous when we removed the mountain, so I've replaced it with a normal tower later on, just like the following 3 square towers, built to be the impenetrable defense of the inner yard of the Lord. And in the real gate, there is this thin gate in front of the bridge. So how can we simulate in a stronghold? By building dual gatehouses? Here comes again the assistance of knowledge from the video of EpicBattles, which helped me to accurately simulate the small gate with the drawable bridge, and I can dig the big moat that would be the strong defense in our flat land situation. Now, if we take a wide look at Smederevo, we'll notice that we can't simulate its wall extension perfectly. We either have to build the southern walls straight and build the square towers in a ridiculous formation, or build it in the isometric dimension of the game going to the northwest, but that will cost cut off an area from the castle. Secondly, we have the problem of the small size of the map in a stronghold, so we can't simulate the entire long wall with its many towers. We have very importantly built the keep section correctly, but the remaining body of the castle must be shrunk. We won't lose many details from the castle, but we'll skip some towers only. We must also preserve some area in the map for the attacking army. And there was a second very low wall on the Danube bank, which was built in the game using the same trick to lower the height of the wall. Now I can build the cannon towers, which were built by the Ottomans later when they captured the castle. And here is much care for every detail. On the eastern straight wall, I cannot simply build square towers to match the real castle because of the wrong orientation, so I've used the mountain trick to build the towers correctly. Although it's not pretty, but they are more realistic when looked at from the side. And now it was easy to simulate the frontal towers with the outer gatehouse, which didn't exist in modern times, but we can't guess what it looked like from the ruins. Finally, digging the moat from the Danube River to the other side. And now we have the base structure of Smederevo simulated in Stronghold DE. Next, I have to build the essential parts that will run the castle, some farms in our free and wide area, with workshops, an apothecary, and military buildings inside the Lord's Court. The garrisoning of Smederevo must be realistic. I can't just fill the walls with crossbowmen and that's it, but there is a balance between the strong and the heavily damaging but slow crossbowmen and the fast archers. Every garrison section has a flag raised, and while these towers can host more troops inside of it, firing arrows from these slits, but we have a shortage in numbers and must protect every section as best as we can, especially the massive towers protecting the keep. Now, Smederevo is ready, with its walls fully garrisoned. We have close to 150 archers and around 130 crossbowmen stationed on different positions on the castle's towers and walls, with 65 spearmen between guards on the ground and the garrison on the walls to protect the rangers from any potential siege ladders, and around 30 armored guards armed with halberds, with only 11 fully armored knights and 4 artillery on the inner 4 towers. This castle is majestic, strong and well designed, but how strong can it withstand under siege? We know that castles was a home to maybe a couple hundred soldiers, hiding behind its strong walls and fighting back with projectiles from the high towers over the larger army of the attacking enemy. No leader will risk his men in besieging a castle without enough troops. In our situation, the enemy arrived from the southwest, and they began deploying into marching formation towards Smederevo's gate. They have a diverse army of knights, archers, mace warriors and crossbowmen, and they made their march in 2 lines. I can observe that they have positioned mostly the light archers in the vanguard and crossbowmen with the army's commanders in the rear guard. The army stood in 2 lines directly in front of our fortifications. They have 250 fast-moving archers, mostly on the left wing, with around 170 more powerful crossbowmen on the right wing, meaning 420 rangers against our 280 on the walls. 4 contingents of around 200 mace warriors in total on both wings. Most dangerously, they have the elite heavily armored infantry of 40 pikemen and 40 knights, split into 2 equal contingents. If the rest of the army can be countered with missile fire, how can we deal with these heavily armored troops? The siege engineers in the back. Apparently, their leader is the one leading the center, with 2 commanders on the wings. While we're stuck on our walls, they launched their signal for the siege engineers, and our garrison was ready to fight. Taking advantage of the free and wide space, their army has launched an all-out coordinated assault. Artillery is shattering the castle's outer walls, with the archers rushing to take positions, and they soon begin exchanging heavy fire with the garrison on the towers. The outer gatehouse collapsed under the continuous bombardment, revealing the weakest point in our large moat, which the enemy's soldiers rushed to exploit by fitting it to the other side. Meanwhile, a group of them was working from a safe distance, trying to fill the moat away from our range of fire and even covered by their crossbowmen's fire. Now it's obvious why they have positioned them on the right. While their left wing wasn't so successful, they have lost many in front of our garrison despite using wooden shields. But now the outer moat is done and the enemy's force poured inside. They entered the castle, smashing anyone in their way and destroying everything, with their crossbowmen advancing to cover the advance into the castle. The inside of Smederevo became a massacre ground, as the infiltrated troops now under fire from 3 sides. It was a hunting party for the garrison. But the real threat was the strong line of armored swordsmen, who were advancing directly to the castle's inner gate. But our last line of defense wasn't as easy as they thought. The fire started cruelly eating everyone who dared to walk in. Now our hope was that the fire would not be extinguished quickly. And with arrows and bolts raining on the enemy's heads, our castle survived that critical situation. And during that time, the garrison was doing well with the attacking crossbowmen. They eliminated most of them with some casualties on our side. When the enemy found that they had lost, the remaining troops started escaping with our arrows pursuing their backs. Our version of Smederevo in Stronghold has repelled the enemy and survived the massive assault, with nobody ever having been able to reach the Lord's court entirely. And strangely, the outer wall looked so much similar to its shape today, with the gatehouse ruins leaving a wide gap and the memory that this castle had stood strongly under a heavy siege. That was the story of Smederevo in Stronghold. I thank you for reaching this far. I couldn't reply to comments in this video and the last one because the entire video was about a long comment, but be assured that your comment will be considered. So leave me your opinion to discuss it in the coming video. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to Strongfort channel, watch the videos we were talking about, and I'll meet you there.